Dr. Castleberry here with our final round of student questions. We're looking at discussion questions for our media culture and social influence class here at Mid-America Christian University, and we are checking out some questions from Destiny at the moment. Destiny also asks, thinking back on your childhood with no electronics, wait a minute. I now I have some mileage. It's clear, but I was not like I was not born in this sort of pre-industrial age, right? There was electricity and running water, right? That was my dad that had an outhouse as a child, not me. Thinking back to on your childhood with no electronics, how do you see less electronics? How do you see a difference in today's kids media I'm gonna try to translate here. But compared to your own, how might kids nowadays see media differently than you did as a child? It's complicated, right? Don't we hate that kind of answer? It's complicated. People want firm answers. And I think that's where a lot of our tensions come from, right? It's like, just tell me the truth. Like, just tell me yes or no, right or wrong, right? Just make it easy. And no, it's not. And we have to kind of navigate these gray areas. I mean, and that's why we study. That's why we study media together in this kind of context. And it's beautiful. And that's a wonderful thing. But it's complicated, this how children might see it differently. They're still impacted and influenced, right? But it doesn't mean just because it's complicated doesn't mean we should sit back and ignore it. I think that's just that opportunity to say we should engage, discuss, research, write about, explore, create case studies, and pursue answers in terms of media effects, media impacts on children, or maybe even how that carries into adulthood, because clearly that's also important. Oh, da, 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 da. Why is it important to understand who your customers really are as individuals, coming out of the Millennial Theory and Popular Culture introduction? That's an interesting question that sort of starts to pivot toward marketing and advertising and brand strategy a little bit. And so we might table it for a future discussion in a future class, but I can definitely suggest that because of mass media and because of the nature of marketing and advertising and businesses just growing and growing and growing, there's like this vying for all of our attention and our money and that kind of thing. It is necessary that we that when we have a message to give, whether it's a communication message or a product to sell or move, that we need to think as narrow and specific as possible and communicate and articulate ourselves in that capacity, because that's what we call that niche focus, and that's where a lot of these smaller areas are heading and they're driven. Okay, let's see. Let's close it out with some comments from Megan, and I'm digging the sort of a lot of contextualization in Megan's responses, right? Really working her own questions out as she's asking them. It's a great practice, strong habit, and so think about that from time to time. Don't be afraid to explore your own question as you're writing it. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's going to help you process the readings that much more. Also reflecting on pop culture, or excuse me, communication theory and millennial pop culture. Megan responds, I do feel like younger millennials see a deficiency in the area of communication in person, meaning live, right? Person to person. Ideologies, theories, and beliefs seem to be reduced to memes and out of context quotes. Touche, right? I definitely, I was trying to think of one and failed. Epic fail. Hashtag. Understanding communication through an academic lens, or theoretical lens, I guess we could say. I hope I can combat the idea that millennials lack certain communication skills. Absolutely. I think a book like this or others that and texts we talk about are a way for us to be able to increase our communication skills, right? And so recognize, if you want to be the master communicator, if you want to excel and climb the ladder and be able to do all the things you want to do in the professional pursuits that you are seeking, that it starts with us, right? It starts with our ability to meet someone else on their own terms. So we have to become the master communicators. And how do we do that? Well, we can master modes of message interpretation, right? Investigation, interpretation, analysis. Being able to not just encode our message for others, but to decode the many possible meanings others have, all right? All of a sudden, it's putting some of our dense theoretical readings into context with that kind of reframing, right? So, okay, we can apply these tools to not only better understand others, but meet them on their terms and still be able to get our message across. So, great food for thought. Since the book is directed toward millennials, it'll be interesting to see how much we relate to these texts being in play. Fair enough, and recognize, a title like this, in all fairness, as much of a marketing hook, right? It sounds catchy, so thus it becomes more appealing. It has, there are so many diverse chapters, mass appeal, right? It's coming at communication theory from numerous directions. So I don't think it's going to make anyone feel outdated based on the examples used. It spreads pretty far in terms of its hooks, so I'm looking forward to that. I think the idea of qualitative analysis is more appealing on an emotional level than the rigid, calculated nature of quantitative analysis. You're hitting the nail on the head with that, right? What we can recognize is qualitative research often goes for rich, smaller sample sizes in the things that they seek to analyze, smaller sample sizes, so that we can unearth or pull out the rich, nuanced details or layers of it. Hence, we're doing something like analyzing, a single media artifact over and over again in our media journals, or, narrowing our conversations to a sample genre as our, lens of choice. Same thing you can think about versus, quantitative data. It gets that kind of that raw rub for being cold, calculated. Of course it is, right? We're using statistics to understand the world so that we can maybe manipulate or just interpret a mass number of people. Look for those common denominators there, all right? So both are highly valuable. We love both. We use both every day, and but yeah, we get those deep layers out of critical analysis, which is falls into that qualitative umbrella. I think on the topic of individualism, I think of how media has evolved, particularly social media, in a way that celebrates individualism while bringing together people who consider themselves individualized and unique. Media has simultaneously caused them to think they are not in line with society while providing an avenue for them to feel socially accepted. Exactly, right? This is a trick. Sort of that whole gimmick about social media is how to promote your unique self, right? Your individual brand. And yet at the same time, it's kind of homogenizing us, right? It's pulling us together to the exact same types of functions, right? You can like something, you can share something, you can upload something, you can send a message, right? It's very basic. And that's funny. It's ironic, right? That's how marketing works. One of the best strategies in all of marketing is to convince the consumer that not only is your product unique and special, but that they will be unique and special by consuming your product, right? But the goal, of course, the end goal is to sell as much product as possible. So we're all unique and special, with our Coca-Cola or whatever, product, iPhone, etc. Mm-hmm. Love some follow-up reflection. Number 2, talk about Hall's hegemonic ideological domination, or the dominant hegemonic readings we tend to have in texts. And I'm pulling excerpts here as opposed to reading the whole thing, but I don't think I'm reframing it in any way. Megan suggests emphasizing the weight and pervasive nature of the ideas of the ruling class or white middle class of America has made a lot of white people uncomfortable. They don't want to assess how media has shaped their ideas of race and minorities and history and so on. And this is coming out of like some personal conversations and personal experiences there, right? I'll blanket that. What you are describing how ideology functions, okay? So, and we're going to get into this more in later classes or in readings. We can explore this in layers, but in essence, ideology is sort of the invisible values and shared belief sets that we have in culture. And it often functions or works or travels beneath the surface, right? So it's both visible and invisible. It's both overt and covert, right? But it tends to function covertly. So it's beneath the surface in ways we don't often like to articulate out loud, right? Because once you say something, it exists, now all of a sudden we're thinking about that thing instead of just going along and doing, right? And that actually ties us back to that idea of how rhetoric functions as well, and some of those modes of persuasion, right? And that's how we get to social influence in not only culture in general, but also in media culture. Okay, so this expanded into just a GabFest, but it's your GabFest. Grateful to all of our students who participated in the discussion questions. We were able to kind of turn this into a makeshift mailbag of a mini lecture to cap off our week 2 readings and really flood the headspace with our week 3 content and assignments. So looking forward to those and future discussions that you will have in store. Thank you.